Thank you so much for joining us. We are here and we are going to have some lovely chat with Dr. Sam. Hello, Dr. Sam.
Hello, hi. I'm Sam Hiew, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity to chat to Manpreet, on live, and with all of you who are interested in learning about ADHD in women. The subject is very close to my heart as I am making an educational documentary about ADHD in women at the moment, and also on a dual journey of pursuing an ADHD diagnosis myself here in the UK. And
sorry. Just checking out everything is going well. Yeah. So well, thank you so much, Sam, for sharing the news that I had kept more like a secret till now. That everybody, guys, Dr. Samantha Hiew is planning and is working on a movie on ADHD. Especially, so basically, her focus would be on women and empowering and educating everybody about ADHD or ADD in women. I think that's amazing. Now, before moving ahead, I want to thank each one of you to join us, for joining us live and also while watching replay. So what I'm grateful for is you taking a step to be considerate towards your own mental health. Because when you are taking this step, I understand that you are also interested in neurodiversity. You are interested in understanding other people. You are taking a step towards building an inclusive society. And I and Dr. Samantha, we are grateful to you. Thank you very much. So I'll begin with a brief intro of the topic. Well, ADHD. I'm sure most of you have heard about ADHD. What is it? And it's called a neurodiverse condition. But what does it mean to be neurodiverse? Well, in super simple terms, it means that the wiring of the brain of people with ADHD or any condition which is called, a neurodevelopmental condition, the wiring in the brain is different from most of the people. That's it. In super simple terms, that's what it is. It's just that the wiring in our brain, the way our neurons function, the neural pathways that we have is different than most people, which makes it a challenging thing for us, as well as it poses a lot of strengths for us, which we can realize, which we can utilize and empower ourselves and society with. We can leverage those strengths and work around those challenges, and all of this is possible with support. But before dwelling much into ADHD further, I would want to give a brief intro about myself. I'm Dr. Manpreet. I'm usually known as Miss MP by my kids. I'm a child psychologist and I'm passionate about working with children. I began this series for most of so basically to create awareness on mental health and ADHD, basically neurodiversity, where people can understand more about what does it mean to be an ADHD. So I am an ADHDer here, Dr. Samantha, who is a video creator. She has been into communications for a long time, and she is actually an entrepreneur. Today, she is here with us, and I'm so sorry, guys. Actually, the camera, this mobile is heating up, and I need to do something about it. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I think it's better. Anyway, so thank you for bearing with me. So Dr. Samantha is also a commercial model. She has been into a lot of ventures, and I like to call her a serial entrepreneur. She has lots of interests, and I think we are going to much more learn about her. I'm so sorry. I also forgot to mention that she is making a movie, which I mentioned earlier anyway, on ADHD. So what is it going to be like? what is it, which stage is she at right now. I think let's hear from her, and we will move forward afterwards. Yeah. Dr. Samantha, over to you, please.
Sure. So, hello everyone. I'm currently at the very early stages of making this documentary, and I want it to be educational about ADHD in women. And I'm in the stage of developing my stories and potentially shooting a teaser film in January. And the reason I wanted to pursue this film is so over the early lockdown in the UK, approaching the summer, I sort of went through a bit of mental health issue myself. I fell into a bit of a depression because I won't call it a midlife crisis because I'm still very young, but I was figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. And as Manpreet has said, I am somebody who has started a lot of projects and also ran a couple of businesses in the past. But I've also managed to keep one hand onto the corporate world, where I worked my way up from becoming a communications officer in Imperial College London to taking contracts in pharma, data science companies with projects that discusses oncological networks. And so what I wanted to find out next is, well, how can I package everything that I've done in my life, and propel it to the next level? And that was where I struggled a bit, because at every transition in my life, when I finished studies, when I went from one job to another, I always struggled to see how I could fit into the society, knowing that there are certain things that don't really work for me, like working in a 9 to 5 in a job that I might not be very passionate about. So I think I'm someone who needed to see the motivation behind why I take on the job, and sometimes it's money, sometimes it's being part of something bigger than myself. And because my passion has always been cancer research, so I, in my last contract, I saw that, that was a good motivation to carry on the contract. And now I wanted to bring it to the next level, and I couldn't see how I could do it. And so I got quite depressed, and then I came across a PR guru who is very, very successful, who earns 6 figures, and is also very articulate, and she said she has ADHD. She discussed it in her Facebook group, and I was surprised, because ADHD, to me, my earliest memory of reading about ADHD was in a hyperactive boy, who also had other conditions like depression and bipolar. And for me, it was such a stigma, to be associated with it, and to think that I potentially have it, because I read into the condition and I thought this pretty much explains my life, the impulsivity and making decisions that had led to some misadventures in my life, and the inattentiveness, where sometimes somebody can be talking to me, and if there is no interest in me listening to them, if my life didn't depend on it, I would trail off. And people say to me, "You look like you're really interested," but when I start talking, I'm zoning off over there. And it's not something that I can help, because I really want to talk to people. Sometimes I'm very interested in them, but I can't control it. Another channel switches on in my brain, and there I go. And so from potentially thinking that I'm normal like everyone else, embracing the fact that I am neurodiverse, which is a new term to me as well, was a rocky journey, because I started being quite, all right, a sense of relief that, oh, this could be me. But then I realized that, oh gosh, would people judge me for it? And what is available out there, right? That's the first thing you want to know. What are the people like you like, So I looked through a lot of resources and media, and a lot of it is centered around ADHD as a deficiency, and not much about how it could be great for you, if you could learn to hone the talents that you have, the passion that you have, the ability to hyper focus, where you could zone in on something for hours and hours on end. and do not come out for air until you need to go to bed. Um, and so I wanted to make a film to sort of send a message that yes, there are life-threatening deficiencies with ADHD, which you need to support, and find help with. But there are
Hmm.
also the uplifting bit of ADHD, where people with ADHD have managed to propel themselves into success in life, maybe because they have support, and maybe they have the right, parenting or teacher support from a young age, and maybe having the right mentality and the right opportunity. And it was
Hmm.
important for me to, see the representation of these women who have ADHD, to hear from them, from the horse's
Hmm.
mouth, rather than have a healthcare professional tell you what they are like,
Yeah.
and to change the thinking around ADHD as a deficit. And along the way also, I realized that there was a lot of issues that cause women to fly under the radar, to cause girls, young girls, children to fly under the radar. And there need to be a big change around mental health research priorities and funding to ADHD treatment and diagnosis.
Hmm.
So I was hoping that I could collate everything into a film and then, sort of be a
Hmm.
founding message to uplift women with ADHD and change the conversations around it. I hope that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think that's exactly something that I think that we need, because as my experience goes with children and my personal experience as a child, I used to look for role models that I could, relate to. There were a lot of people, of course, but then while growing up, you couldn't. I mean, I couldn't really relate to those people because their journeys didn't really seem to make sense with the fact that I was active. I wanted to do things in life. I had support in its own way. But then the challenges that I faced didn't seem to really, connect with the people who were around me or the people whom I was looking up to. So gladly, yes, there were some teachers who were, very supportive. Those were usually, so in Indian context, I mean, that's how it usually is in India. But I think it's more of an Asian thing. However, you can share maybe your experience on it. So English teachers were good, so they would be understanding, they would listen to you, they will give you some time to get done with your work and everything. So it usually was like I couldn't really connect with a lot of people around me, and hence my actually I pursued my diagnosis 2 years ago when I was clinically depressed earlier. Then things, and then I had also anxiety, and I was also at the verge of in the early stages of psychosis in 2013, before 2013. So I was like, what exactly is going on? Why is it that people around me are not able to catch things about me? Yes, there are a lot of challenges that I'm facing, and I see that the people around me as well are facing challenges. They are struggling sometimes because of me, because yes, as an ADHD, executive functioning skills are I mean, that's the biggest challenge. Basic, like self awareness, even like emotional awareness, these are some of the basic challenges that we have, following a direction. So we'll be going in one way, and then I mean, maybe we haven't even reached midway, and then we'll be like, oh wow, butterfly, so we are going there. So this is more like
Yeah.
what attention is like. But then I figured out that so while I was pursuing diagnosis, I figured out that whatever we read and usually hear about ADHD is not something that it is in some ways, because ADHD is not about deficit of attention. The difficulty is in being able to shift attention. So from one topic to another, either we switch super quickly, that sometimes even ourselves are not aware, because that's the prefrontal cortex which is majorly affected, and we find it difficult to make logical reasoning to what were we doing at that moment when we shifted. So it usually takes a lot of effort, and that's, I think, this diagnosis has really helped me. And coming back to the plan that we discussed, hey guys, everybody, we have discussed and we have planned for a quick 1 minute breather, where we would request all of you to also participate in 1 minute meditation or mindfulness practice, where we'll be breathing, we'll be sitting straight, we will be breathing through our nose and breathing out through our mouth. So are we ready for a quick 1 minute? Yeah. Great. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Breathe in, breathe out, 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 breathe in, breathe out. Just one more breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, honestly, I feel better after taking this breather. How are you feeling, Sam?
Oh, I'm feeling great. Much calmer.
Yeah, so somebody recently here asked that, how are we uh, monitoring the extent of ADHD? Well, as soon as we feel excited, so this is one of the practice that I wanted to share with everybody, that as soon as you feel that you are feeling too excited, so there's a trigger that you need to set for yourself. Sometimes you can ask a buddy to, hold you accountable for it, that, you are feeling excited. Let's take 3 deep breaths together. Or you can do it by yourself. Take deep breaths as long as you need to feel calmer, and then move ahead. That's how we are monitoring that, this is that how we are behaving, and how are we managing. So there was another question: how is ADHD impacting our lives? To be honest, there's a huge impact. Our lives are actually driven by how we are. This is how our brain is. There's no way out for us. It can't be treated. So honestly, the answer to many people who ask this, that if ADHD can be cured, it can be treated. No, ADHD can be managed because it's wired in your brain. Yes, there are a lot of studies saying something or the other. You can choose to check things out. You can choose to refer to a lot of resources, as many as you can. I did it in my own journey while pursuing diagnosis. As Dr. Sam is doing her research in her own way, I would recommend you to take your own step. You don't have to listen to any of us and follow it. However, in our personal experience, I think we can say, and at least in my experience, I can say, it's not about treatment, it's about management of it.
Yeah.
And there are tons of resources available. So we will be
Yeah.
discussing things later in our conversation.
Can I
And
just add, Manpreet? Can I just add? Well, I think how ADHD impact on your daily life is basically how ADHD impact you. So for a person who's interested to find out how they can manage their ADHD, first of all, I think they would need to pursue a diagnosis and figure out what it is about ADHD that impact them. For women, I would say a lot of it is around emotional regulation, task initiation, the ability to see motivation in what you do. And I would say that normally ADHD impacts people in the transitions in their life. You'll be going about and you have set, like, you have a bunch of coping strategies to help you cope with your current endeavor. But then once that stops and you need to change, and if there's a change in circumstance in your life, ADHD becomes more obvious. And I think for me is, the birth of my second child, who is great, and I didn't have any postnatal depression. But it's when my maternity leave was about to come to an end and I had to figure out what I wanted to do next. That was when it hit me. So I would say, yeah, you would need to first figure out what it is that is impairing in your life, and then you could then manage it. And there are a lot of ways you can manage it. I'm certainly not the world's expert, but I've talked to enough people who suggest that medication is the start of the management of your symptom. Some people agree with it, some people don't. But there are also other ways like counseling and coaching. And here in the UK, they deem ADHD as a disability. So although it's not a favorable term, but if you have ADHD, you've been diagnosed, you can seek support from the government in business coaching and counseling, which is funded by the NHS. It's not the same in every country, but yeah.
So that's very specific to the UK, and when it comes to from Asian perspective, there is no such thing available.
No,
there's
you have to go private.
Health, and then on top of it, if you are an ADHD, oh my goodness! So things are there, and there is Dr. Sarah, who has mentioned such a beautiful thing here. I'll just put it for everybody. So you don't grow out of being neurodivergent. No, you don't. It's really a part of who you are, because that's how our brains are. That's what makes us who we are. We really can't. And medication also it can work out in certain cases. In certain cases, it doesn't. Usually, the reason is that there are comorbid conditions. There are other conditions as well associated with ADHD. ADHD usually doesn't occur on its own alone. There are other conditions as well, like learning challenges, learning disorders, or mood disorders, or anxieties. There could be other comorbid conditions as well. So hence, if somebody is going and planning for a diagnosis, it would be recommended that you go for a thorough clinical interview. That's something that you need to note down. Thorough clinical interview. If you are an adult, that's what you need to go for. Because none of the tests that, even for that matter, the checklist that DSM provides. So there are psychiatrists who are now, after doing so much research and in their own experience, they see that the checklist that is provided does and says that out of all the items, 6 need to be ticked. When it comes to adults, it's you, because you have been living with it for so long that you have your own strategies to deal with it. So it's important for you to go with a thorough clinical interview to find out what are the things that are affecting your life. Is it really ADHD, or there are other conditions as well? So we will come back to Sam. We will come back to our dialogue that we wanted to share for everybody. And I'm so sorry. Before that, I just want to mention to everybody that, guys, this is a 4-part series that we are hosting. So today is the first one that we have. There would be 3 more where we will be discussing more about our strengths, challenges, and interests and career options that as ADHD women and ADHD men that you can choose and opt for a thriving life and financial support. Because you can see that because of the challenges that we face, financial stability is one of the biggest concerns when it comes to ADHD. people with ADHD, for them, if they are able to create an environment, then is it is good. If there are challenges, then if there are certain challenges with the environment, then it becomes difficult to support yourself financially. So there would be a proper one dedicated discussion for everybody to listen to what do we have to say on career options. Anyway, so we'll come back. So Dr. Sam has got some questions for me, and I've got a couple of questions for Dr. Sam. Let's go with it.
So yes, my main interest is because ADHD in women, I would say, is so underdiagnosed. And depending on what research you're looking at, you're looking at the ratio of men to women with ADHD from 2 to 1 or 10 to 1. Is it really that women, there are less women with ADHD, or is it because they are not detected, they are underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed? Because as you know, ADHD often, expressed as anxiety and depression. And I have spoken to enough women who have depression, but when they go to the doctor, they're diagnosed with depression with no further investigation into their history. And then they start antidepressants, but they find that it doesn't help. It actually makes things worse. And then, there are people who go for cognitive behavioral therapy, which help for a certain time, but doesn't actually help them in the long term. Why do you think ADHD is, underdiagnosed in women? Is it because of the problem with diagnostic criteria, where we are getting, data from very outdated criteria, where it is used to diagnose more obvious ADHD, like hyperactivity or, impulsivity, which isn't that obvious in a woman, especially as they have, developed a lot of strategies. Yeah. Why do you think that is, Manpreet?
Well, in my perspective, it's more about our understanding of ADHD in general. Because ADHD is still, though there's a lot of research that has been done on ADHD, the information that we have is still limited. In the terms that there are checklists available, there are tools, there are tests which are pen and paper or print media. But then there are also tests now available which use high tech tools like new spect analysis is done. Then there is this which analyzes neuro EEG, where you can find out about ADHD. But then again, there are discrepancies to it. So when it comes to ADHD, it's still difficult to pinpoint why is it happening and what are the reasons behind it. And people with ADHD need to come out as So there's this wonderful article that I was reading the other day where they said that the best person to find out if a person has ADHD/ADD or not is the person who has ADD. They are the ones who are able to quickly spot a person that they have. I think they have ADD.
Right.
And then
so they need to know within themselves.
Yeah, it's more like we have this connection anyway. But then in more other terms, it's society as large that there are expectations that we have from women and girls. Yet that if a girl is being hyperactive, she would be noticed. But then in girls, usually the hyperactivity is covert. It's not overt. There is hyperactivity, but that leads to more towards internal factors. Like they will try to suppress it. They'll try to keep it to themselves. They will try to abide with the societal norms and the expectations that as a society, as parents, and as adults that we have from children. Emotional, again, awareness. So when it comes to girls, we because of the nature, because of the evolutionary history that we have, that we are more towards nurturing environment. Hence we try to abide by the expectations that are there from us. So
Mhm.
if so, like I remember, I was so till 5 years of age, I was super active. I would be, running, roaming around here and there. But then after the birth of my brother, I now I recall that I was withdrawn. I then started spending more time with myself, whereas I am more of an extrovert person. Though there are both the things in every person, but then I was more of an extrovert. However, all my friends in the school life and in fact in the college life know me as an introvert person because that's what I developed. That was my coping strategy. That if I don't talk to people, they won't get hurt. Because when I say something, they get hurt. They have certain expectations from me, and I'm not able to fulfill them. Hence, I tried to shut myself, and uh, and and it's really difficult, because uh, even if as a clinician you're trying to help a child, if the child is not ready, if the girl is not ready to share, you can't force anybody. So as a society at large, we need to welcome the differences. Then only it will help us to make an inclusive environment. So that's where I'll come back to your question, that why is it difficult. It's yes, partly because of the science behind it. We still have limited information on ADHD, and the part is also environment. The environment is not conducive. Sometimes it's so, I was labeled as chanchal, which means fickle minded in English. So it was said lovingly that, only later on I realized, okay, that's what they have been saying. But then now I'm embracing it. I'm going back into my childhood. I'm remembering those things. I'm deliberately I'm actually taking conscious decision to sit, meditate, and try to recall what all that I have been through, so that I can heal myself and do better. So there's Dr. Sarah who asked us this question, Sam, that do you see ADHD as a superpower? Uh, Honestly, I want to. I'm still, on my way. I still don't think that I'm there yet, that I see it as a superpower. But then, yeah, I won't say a no as well.
Yeah. Can I add? So,
Please.
Sarah, I wanted to speak to you. So, how do we see ADHD as a superpower? Depends on the amount of support and allowance we were given in our early lives, right? To tap into that gift and not squashed. Because a lot of young people with ADHD, they learn to eventually, like Manpreet said, learn to suppress their like hyperactivity behaviors or lack of attention because they don't believe that that is accepted. And
Hmm.
if you're able to tap into it, and if someone grows up with a supportive parent who helps them compensate for not being able to concentrate in class, and if they along the way they met a mentor or a teacher who believe in them and help them tap into that tenacity, then of course they can thrive. Because having ADHD gives you hyper focus in something that you are super interested in, and that
Yeah.
often is what you love, right? So if you love
Yeah.
something enough, you can do it really well. And like the persistence and the willpower when you want to do that, is enhanced in an ADHD. Sometimes to the extent that they cannot relax because they would just single-mindedly pursue something right to the
Yeah.
end,
Yeah.
until like it goes as far as possible. And so it is only a superpower if you can manage it. And that's why we see a difference in the outcomes of women with ADHD. There are a lot of women who are only diagnosed late in life. Some of
Yeah.
them had to deal with decades of pain and suffering, shame and guilt for how ADHD and made them act to their loved
Yeah.
ones or in their academic life or career life. And there are other women who have had support from a young age who have managed to achieve so much. Some of
Yeah.
the most successful entrepreneurs that I've read about have ADHD. I'm pursuing this character right now. She is only she's in the late 20s, but she has won an award for writing a book that explain humans. And she's 28, but she's obviously had a lot of support since she was young, and people who believed in her, who did not shut her down, who did not clip her wings, and now she's flying above, and managed to hone into her superpowers, like you said. So I would say that, it's so important for us to educate parents and, educational establishments on how, to nurture our young people with ADHD, because the rates of suicides are really high in girls, young people with ADHD, and more so if you come from homes that are troubled. And it is so important that people understand that, a turbulent child doesn't necessarily mean that they're just acting out, on purpose. They might not be doing things vindictively, but they're doing it because they cannot help it and they don't understand. So we need to learn to help them.
Yeah. And for that, we need to know more about what is it to live with ADHD. There is this beautiful question. Beautiful in the sense that this is one of the myths that's there. So somebody has asked that, do we outgrow? No, we don't.
No.
Because that's how our brains are structured now. Our neural pathways are now designed in a fashion that we cannot outgrow. We cannot outgrow of being ADHD.
Well,
No.
I can attest to knowing people in their 60s or 70s who still have ADHD, some who do not even know they have the condition. And it's not something you outgrow, it's expressed in your genes. It's how your pathways are in your brain are wired, and it's because of, how do I put it correctly in terms of neuroscience? Is it the reduction of neurotransmitters in your brain? Serotonin.
Yes, there are certain hormones which are secreted less. So basically, if we have to, say what is it, then in that case, we will say that it is. Sorry, just a moment. I had mentioned it. Yes, the gene. So there's the study which supports the heredity part of it. Whereas there are some psychiatrists and some researchers who also say that it can also happen because of brain injury that happens early in the life, and hence it is neurodevelopmental because it affects the development of the brain. Anyway, so this particular gene that we are talking about is, so there's a genetic variation in ADGRL3 gene. So there's a particular segment of that gene which uh, uh, the function is altered. The function of that particular segment gets altered in certain people, because of which we experience what we do as ADHD. That means with our executive functioning skills, our personal management, so the things that are usually considered as something that you need to thrive in life are hampered in our brains. So those areas are hampered. Hence, it is called a disorder. But then, does it have to be a disorder? Does it have to be a disability? But then, disorder is not something that we can choose. If somebody wants to say that it's a disorder, cool. I think it doesn't really matter as much as what do you think about it.
Yeah.
So do you want to consider it as a disability, or do you want to see it as a superpower, or at least just being human? So we are human as well. There is no superpower. Though, honestly, there's this a part of me that loves comics and comic characters. I would love to see myself as an X-Men, somebody in
I have thought about that actually. They have the school for the neurodiverse. It's like the mutants, the X-Men school, right? We need a Professor X, to lead us. Well, like you say, neurodiversity.
Honestly, I relate the most with what's her name? The role that Jennifer Lawrence has played.
Right. Oh, yeah. I know which one you mean, but I don't know the name of the character.
Anybody watching us, do you know what's her name? I can't really recall. Because she changes her personality. And honestly, if today you go and watch our Instagram live from yesterday, both of us would be, you would look at us, sorry, sorry, you would observe that we were different yesterday, how we behaved, and how we are behaving today. It's
Yeah.
different. So it's,
It's
it's
not
more like,
it's not practice. This is all spontaneous.
I guess that's the best part of going live, right? We can,
Yeah.
just be ourselves. And I guess that's what we need. Yeah, as people with ADHD, more people need to know that we are normal in our own ways again. Yes, it's
Yeah.
super challenging to work with us. I would not say that it's easy. It is super challenging. It's like, oh, thank you very much. Yes, it's Mystique. Yes, 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 exactly.
Oh,
Sorry.
mystique.
Yeah, Mystique.
Shape
Yeah.
shifting. Right.
Mentioned. Thank you, Artshala Center for Design. Yes, Mystique is somebody that we relate to, at least I relate to. So we will come back anyway. That's, this exactly is one of the challenges that we as ADHD people face, and which is going haywire. So we had a very structured, honestly sharing it with everybody, we had a super structured design that, this is how we will go, one step by step. But here we are. Sam, can you really recall which place are we at right now? Which
Uh,
stage are we?
I think we kind of went kind of talking about diagnosis to pre-diagnosis and then talking about neurodiversity, which is I think all interrelated, but I'm still having the structure and my brain is like stick to the program. It's part of being a journalist and like, okay, let's go back to the list. But yeah, my point is, even though our brain are wired in different ways, as ADHDers, we embark on a task, and go to a place where we don't, necessarily intend to go, but we always come back. There was an experiment done in mice, mice who were given ADHD characters, and then mice who were neurotypical, and then they put these mice, in a tunnel, and then have
Mhm.
them find their way out. And they find that the neurotypical mice, will find their way out quite quickly, and they know the direct route to it. But then the ADHD character mice, they will go, around in circles. They will check every single exit, and then eventually they make it. They take longer, but they make it. And that is like us, really. We
Yeah.
find a way to cope with these deficiencies, but eventually we get it, and we are normal, because who is to say that we're not normal, right? Neurodiversity means you have neurological variations in
Yeah.
your genome, right? And
Yeah. Just
that is the
think
same
alone.
as skin color, hair, and yeah, I mean your eye color. Who are we to say as one human to another that there is something we want to suppress and something we want to express, right? Everyone is different, and there is enough neurodiverse community around to actually say that we are just like everyone else. Everyone
Yeah.
is different, and everyone has a mental health issue. I can
Oh,
challenge that.
mentioning, Sam, here I would highlight that there are studies proving that people with ADHD, so especially women with ADHD, uh, have a history and they face the most mental health concerns. So it's like it goes hand in hand, at least till the time you are diagnosed. And after that as well, again, diagnosis, a formal official diagnosis, is not something which is gonna magically, make things awesome for you.
Yeah.
No, it's just gonna. So what a diagnosis does is it helps you to accept yourself the way you are. Honestly, that's all I think the diagnosis does. Until and unless you are opting for medication, which then again is a very it's a controversial area when it comes to ADHD, because sometimes the medicines, none of the medicines work. In fact, they worsen the situation. So if to go with medicine or not, something that this was one of the questions that we thought, that Dr. Sam would be asking me. I'm just answering it, Dr. Sam.
That's fine. I mean, you're definitely on the right track.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Medication or no medication is something that is a very personal choice. If you think you are able to manage yourself and your family thinks that you are able to manage, your colleagues think that things are happening and everybody is able to support you well, medication is then an optional until and unless the case, again, the case is worse. So it's ADHD is though heredity, it's but it's not like diabetes. There, it's not that simple. You can't take a test and you can know that yes, you have ADHD or you don't, because there are other conditions which coexist and they also mask ADHD. So it's not that simple. But if you are convinced that you have ADHD and you think you have accepted it as well, I think move ahead. Go on and you know look for the strategies. So again, the strategies can be many. One of the best things that you can go for is behavioral therapy. But if you can't afford therapy, because that's what this session is about, that it's not about going for the paid services, but what can you do as a person with ADHD or a person who has a family member with ADHD. The best thing that you can do is provide a conducive environment. Provide an environment which is supportive, which understands that yes, there are challenges that you are facing. It's not because you want to behave that ways. It's because that's the way you are. You have many interests, yet there are times when you will see that you have none of them with you. And similarly, there and again there are studies, as in there's one study which also states that people with ADHD have uh, difficulty maintaining good relationships, and especially their relationships with their parents are affected the most. So that's true for me. I mean, honestly, that's true for me. My parents don't think that how I am is how I should be. And finding a mentor, finding a coach was something that I think that's the best thing that I could do for myself. So if you are able to find a coach that, that would be supportive for the environment and for the family members as well, and exercise, physical exercise, because we have so much energy. I mean, as you can see, I can't sit still. I mean, in a way I envy Sam that you have like so polished and nicely, but then
Oh,
hey, all.
I have to put this under my thigh. My fingers are like that. Okay. So, I mean, yeah. So I'm looking at some ADHD assessment right now, and they said like, are you someone who can sit down, when you need to, and not move? But then they said like, do you sometimes like tap your fingers and your toes? And I was like, yeah, I've learned to kind of hone down, sit down, but then my fingers are still like that, and my heart is beating like that. So like the restlessness could be internal, right?
Yes, yes. Because and then there is somebody who had asked. I'm sorry, I'm just missing out on that comment. They said that is it trying to say that ADD and ADHD are different? Yes, ADD misses the edge part, which is the hyperactivity, which means the physical hyperactivity. So in people with ADD, the major challenge, which is the behavioral challenge, is the inattentive behavior and not the mobility. Hence, you can see that I am more towards the hyperactive, whereas Sam is, I think, again, since we are still waiting for the diagnosis, Sam is more an ADD person, where she can manage, she can sit still, she can do certain things. Yes, it is visible, but she knows about it, not the world. Like for my case, so usually in the conferences, my employer, so there was one employer who got pissed at me like anything because I was not able to sit straight. I was like, they are boring me. What do I do? I'm getting bored. I don't understand. I mean, I am listening to them, but I'm not enjoying it really. So hence the interest. So as parents also, if you see that there is somebody who had asked about the child, how do you manage the child, so let them do lots of different activities and help them follow through. That's one of the things. So we are challenged by schedule. We we hate, so in a way we dislike change. However, the best strategy for people with ADHD is try to maintain a schedule. Maybe that schedule varies from one week to another, but then try to, have some kind of a schedule which would be difficult to manage, but then that's something that you need. Uh, Sam, I wanted to ask you one question.
Yeah.
Like, why are you pursuing this movie, by the way? Like, yes, it's a personal thing, but then why
Well,
exactly?
okay, so like I was saying, when I was pursuing a diagnosis, I was reading up about ADHD in women,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
realized, there is so few representation in main media, in the news, interviewing these women directly. There is a lot of talk, like from a diagnosis and treatment perspective, and it was always said that it coexists with this condition, obesity, diabetes, um,
Hmm.
eating disorder. Yeah, so I wanted it to be a voice, from the women themselves. I wanted to represent, to bust some of the stigmas around
Hmm.
ADHD. You
Hmm.
know, that I mean, a lot of people believe this to still be a male condition, but we
Hmm.
now know that it definitely is not. In fact,
Hmm.
if there were more women who were diagnosed, then the
Hmm.
number could be equal, if not more. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it seems that now, what I'm saying research, there's an attitude magazine. So I think anybody who has ADHD, they know about this magazine. The people who started it had such a great mission, and I just I hope that Sam, you too reach there where people come up to you with respect to information on ADD,
yes, of
that
course.
you have more or less in like all the information that we need with respect to ADHD, and it is presented in the visual format. Oh my goodness, that's much needed.
Yes,
uh, Thank you so much for answering this question, that really, as a person who, so as a new parent, I wonder if, since it is genetic, what if my son has it?
yeah.
Like,
It's
you
highly
have
hereditary. Yeah,
have it.
I really agree. I mean, now knowing that I potentially have it, I can see the pattern, from my parents to
Mm,
children, you know. Um, so yeah, that's why I want to change the thinking around ADHD as a deficit,
mm,
and I want to highlight, the talent, the gifts, the
mm,
interest, and the success of women with
mm.
ADHD, the strength that ADHD gives them when they're able to manage their condition and thrive and live a very fulfilling life, because it's completely possible for neurodiverse people to live a life just like everyone else. Manpreet? All right. I suppose Manpreet
Hey,
has
sorry,
lost connection
so
from
sorry, we are back. I
it.
think something happened with the internet, so we are back.
Right.
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Oh, so there's there. whew, So I think I just went haywire. So we'll come back
No,
to some one question that Julia has asked. I'll just put it on the banner.
no, of
Yeah.
course.
What will we say to people? So
Mm,
Julia, I'll begin with my perspective on this, and then I'll request Sam to share hers.
yes, of course.
Uh, I think it depends on who this person is. If the person is a closed one, then helping them with the data, supporting that ADHD is real, work towards helping the other person understand what is ADHD and what could be the challenges. However, if the person is not close, just leave it. I mean, that's my personal opinion. Just leave it. Don't try to fix somebody who is not ready to change.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam, what's your take on this?
Sure. Yeah. So in the very early stages of pursuing the diagnosis myself, looking into options, I have confided in a friend who is very nice, who sort of helped me, with the thinking that I have depression and do I have ADHD? And she said that if you go looking for a mental health diagnosis, you will get one eventually. And that kind of frightened me a little bit. Oh, I don't really want to have a mental health condition, but I know myself and I know that okay, everyone has mental health conditions, but
Hmm.
what if your mental health condition, the issues caused by this condition actually impaired your life? It's caused you to a lot of misadventures in your life, and it caused a lot of setbacks in your life, and only you know that.
Hmm.
Um, and with in terms of ADHD or ADD, the impulsivity in someone in ADHD could cause issues with making decisions. It could cause them to look for pleasure seeking activities that if in a young person it goes unmanaged, it could cause big issues like crime, and maybe
Yes.
like
It's very
indulging in drugs and
yeah.
just keeping the wrong company, because you are chasing this pleasure. And without help, a lot of people could end up in the wrong side of law, or it could cost them their lives. So if you know that you have gone to that level, and or to a milder level, then it is your right to pursue the diagnosis. And I follow a writer who published her experience in the Telegraph in the UK, and she said that even after all the semi-structured interviews with her psychiatrist, they don't hand out the drugs for free. They have to do several confirmative tests. They're not fully. It doesn't fully say like these tests are not like the gold standard. Let's just say, but they substantiate that you have the condition,
Hmm.
and yeah, then they will prescribe the treatment necessary. So yeah, this is actually what you said about why people think you're making it up. And if they say that, that's part of the stigma, that people don't believe that you have ADHD because you can't prove it, you know. But you know yourself,
Maybe show them this video, guys. These girls are saying, these women are saying that they have ADHD, so it must be there. Anyway, so and I'll come back to there's a question, Sam. It's a wonderful question. So at what age? Uh,
I think ADHD can be diagnosed in children, and a lot of the research recently, there was a new research that came out taking a lifespan approach in identifying females with ADHD. I think it goes up from the age of 6, 5 or 6. Is it 4? Okay, well that's even earlier than the research.
Our
That's
size more honest. So sharing my experience here, Sam. I early in the morning today, I had a client visiting me for their kid, and most possibly they have. So the kid has ADHD. So it's a boy. Hence, it was as the myth goes that in boys it is fairly visible, and it was quite visible that he has difficulty in paying attention to certain things and following directions, following through the commands. However, when he was interested in things, like as you can see, there are trees and stuff around me, the kid was sitting under the tree for almost an hour, which was astonishing for their parents. And then another incident happened. So they stayed here in this at my vicinity for 2 days. They had come from approximately 100 hours or so, sorry, 100 kilometers and so to get the diagnosis and all the things done. So so in the second day, that was, yeah, that was today, and yesterday under the tree he was sitting there for almost an hour. And what he was doing, he was just playing with the mud. He was looking at the birds. He was just enjoying himself, which was so opposite to what the parents had been saying about him, and they themselves were astonished. So today in the morning, when they met me before that, they said that their son was almost for 2 hours spent time with a pup, which was something they said we never ever experienced it. We never saw our kid sitting still for such a long time. So when it comes to children, again, I would say that uh, don't rush, at least till 5 years of age. See if there are since the kids are also going through a lot of hormonal changes, they are learning. There are so many emotions that as a kid, oh my god, it's overwhelming. Just imagine to experience anger. We know as adults it's so difficult, and as a kid, if they are so when somebody is not able to understand them, the amount of frustration and anger that gets built up comes out as as temperament or a tantrum that we say. However, the need is to understand them. All they really need is just a little patience. So when it comes to people with ADHD, women with ADHD, and for that matter, everybody, everybody around us, what we need is a little more consideration, just a little more understanding, maybe just one more breath before reacting. That's what we need. All of us need. So instead of, I would say, rushing for diagnosis or labeling yourself, it's not about all of it. Like we as women. So here, Sam is pursuing a diagnosis at a certain age. I pursued at the age of 28. I'm 30 now, and in 2 years, I see a difference. Not because the fact that I was diagnosed, but because I accepted myself. It took me 2 years. Finally, I mean, I came out as ADHD in October this year. That I think I need to come out and let people know that this is who I am. Why? So that other people can at least, you know i i I envision to empower with information to all, as many people as we can. Like, in six figures we talk about money. I think in six figures I want to see lives I'm able to influence with this message that ADHD is real, and we are just as human as everybody is. The kids with ADHD are real. They are not making up. They are not trying to test your patience. They need your patience. So that's something that I wanted to mention when it comes to. Actually, I'm extremely passionate about children. I just can go on and on and on and on. I
Can I
mean, Sam knows it
can
too.
I just add? I mean, in terms of ADHD in younger children, I would say that when you have ADHD, you have this innate creativity, this ability to create or the need to create. And for me, I found that as a young person, I could, like, I was hyperactive as a child, very, very hyperactive. I was an athlete and I won gold medals in track and field when I was younger. But the only time I really sort of honed down and be quiet was when I created. And art therapy was so important because you could just sort of silence all the noise in you and channel it towards this great masterpiece. And I see it
Yeah.
now in my children. The only time I would have peace and quiet in the house is number one, they're watching TV, or number two, they are creating a drawing or a painting. And my daughter seriously believes that she's an artist and she's going to give a lot of artwork for free when she grows up. But like Manpreet says, that a lot of children with this condition, they are unable to control their mood swings, and they can go from someone who's just bloody going about their day to suddenly reacting very angrily. The tension could be off the scale. And they don't understand why as well. It's so momentary that is that moment, the anger outbursts, and then they go like, what just happened? How did that happen? They couldn't
Yeah.
control it. So
I
it's
mean,
important for
that's
parents to give
where,
allowance.
so sorry, Sam, just to interject here.
Yeah.
So there, I had explained it earlier in earlier videos. I'll just reiterate it here that it's more like, our gates to logical thinking are shut. And since our working memory is affected, so as ADHD, our working memory is affected the most in any which way. Hence, and we are supercharged on emotions, so our reactions are there, and then we forget about them because our gates are closed. Our gates to logical reasoning are closed, and we tend to forget. Even, I mean, I like, thanks to my husband, I mean, he's the one who bears all the burden. I must say, I must give credit to him that, you know, there, I would say things to him. And sometimes things are nasty. I mean, I have to be honest about it. Sometimes it's something that I would never say if I am being aware that, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm behaving. But when we are triggered, and that's where diagnosis as early as possible is needed. Diagnosis, again, understanding that the person is different is needed, because when we grow, we not only develop coping strategies, but we also are triggered much more than when we are kids. So then when we grow up, understanding those triggers, what are the things that are triggering us, what are the things that are, triggering our partner, our, our colleague, what are those things? These things become so vital. So if you can, start working on these as early as possible. What you need to work on, the first thing is, so there's this, Sam, as I think you will be able to see, that Artshala Center for Design, they have asked, how can they help. One of the best things that you can do for children is help them with emotional intelligence. If you can help them with that, so emotional intelligence training, mindfulness training, and also giving an environment which is understanding. So there are other methods like, expressive art, which Dr. Sam have already mentioned, that's a really really good exercise. Engaging in art and creative activities, so not just art. Again, if a person has, so if you see that the student or the child has more interest towards science, help them to create or invent something. Like, we know that, Einstein was neurodiverse. He was ASD. Yeah. So people with ADHD also are similar. We can be extremely creative, we can be really good, only if we are supported well. If we are not supported, most of us, I mean, there's data supporting it, which is so disheartening to see that many of us land up in jails because of our impulsivity. It's not that that's something that we want to do, but we don't have the environment which is supporting us to delay our gratification. So through exercises like mindfulness, breathing activities, you can support more students with Asperger's as well as ADHD.
Hmm.
I hope I could answer, and we both could answer your question. Sam, do you want to add something more here?
Yeah.
Any?
So around my reading on ADHD, I think a big problem is in our schooling system. Is that the schooling system is inherently wrong, and it is because it is a system that encourages you to follow instructions, to be assessed, and to regurgitate information. And if like I do, ADHD people struggle to follow instructions. They
Yeah.
struggle to do something that other people think it's important, and they struggle sometimes to find learning interesting if it is boring. And I read that there is a very successful entrepreneur who said that the only way she could get through school is by studying at the end of it, towards the exam. And she could not find a subject interesting if her mother couldn't make it interesting.
Hmm.
And so like she had a very supportive parent and that helped. But she also looked to Scandinavian countries where they have schools that and like it is structured around allowing the children to go into interesting activities. So they would learn to, like, say, how to build a car engine, and then how does the laptop processor work, and how do you build a tree house, so things that are very sort of like hand-based, labor-based things, which ADHD people like to sort of
Yes.
like get into. Like you
Uh-huh.
do something, you create something with your hands, you understand how processes work, which I
Oh,
think would be far more useful than learning about trigonometry, which until today I struggled to find the relevance, in my real life, even though I didn't do too badly in math, but still, what is the relevance in real life apart from knowing how to count, the amount of things in your food shopping, right?
no, thing. So here, Dr. Sarah also mentioned a great thing, that yes, exactly, that's how it is. That developmentally, it's not appropriate to ask or expect children to sit still. But then again, uh, there are certain things that we need to learn, as these are life skills and this and that. With children with ADHD, it's I think it would be extremely wrong if you expect them to sit still. It's more like trauma. It's like torture for people like us. So we have been through it. We have been through the schooling and all the college and all the academic life, but I think that's what we want to change now. If things happen for as many kids, that they are supported with mobility, and now with homeschooling and working from home, these online classes, I think parents can take a step and include exercise uh, in your everyday life. You do it and show it to your kids how you do it. Don't expect your kids to do something that you would not. Never. It's the saddest example that you are trying to set. If you can't do something, you can't expect somebody else to do it. I mean, you should not. You can again, but you should not, because that's not how it works with modern children. They understand more than we think they do. So I think I am more or less good with the with all the things that I wanted to say. Dr. Sam, would you like to say something more on this
Yeah,
topic?
I mean, it's just around. I mean, what you were talking about classroom setup. I was thinking in the UK a few years ago when I became a new parent, the idea of forest schools, appealed to me a lot because it was a model where you were able to learn in the outdoor environment, be around trees, wood, and sticks, which is a form of meditation in itself, and sort of being focused on a task in the outdoors is so conducive to our mental health because I think we are all organisms that come from nature. We all evolve from each other. So it's only right that we find peace in nature as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And
We need. I mean, I think we must reconnect with nature now, with the pandemic and everything happening around us. I think it's just reiterating. Actually, we moved from our city-based life to this farmhouse that we have here, where I'm also now working, mainly because not just the corona, but it's also that with our baby we decided that we are going to go with homeschooling, and the best place to homeschool your kid is in the nature.
I think it's so adorable that you're homeschooling your baby. I mean, by homeschooling you mean like life skills, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's
Like,
how I see it.
I all the skills that as parents we can provide, and then experts like you are also available. So it doesn't really matter where we are today. If we have internet connection, we have devices running, so we are ready to learn from wherever we are. I think that's the best part.
Exactly. so virtual now.
So I think more or less we have also answered almost all the questions that have been asked so far. Thank you very much for being, such a great audience, Sam. I mean, I think it's such a wonderful thing. Everybody here who joined us had such beautiful questions to ask. There were some myths that we could bust, and the audience has been very supportive. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, and thank you so much, Sam,
Mm.
for disclosing that you are making a movie. The movie is still in the making, so nobody would copy her. Okay, so she's gonna.
Can I just add, Manpreet? So I'm making this education documentary, and the motive is to uplift and inform. And so I would also like to, this to reach as many places as possible. So if you have any interest to get involved or you want to know more about this, you can message me on LinkedIn, or you can follow me on Instagram. It's ADHD_girls. And when you message me on Instagram or LinkedIn, I can also give you my email address if you have any questions to ask. And if you're in the UK, if you want to know the resources, I can point you to the right way. I won't pretend to know everything about it, but I know the people you can ask. Okay, so I'm
Yeah,
hoping to make this as inclusive as possible.
that would be really helpful. I think the audience would agree that it would be really helpful, especially if you are in UK. So there was one person who is from UK. She, I think, is not able to attend the live session, but she had this question, that how to pursue an affordable or low cost diagnosis in UK. So if you have any resources, I would request you to share them in the comments so that anybody and everybody can, explore them.
So
And guys, there we would be sharing some resources in the comment section, which you can explore. And take your time. If you have any questions, you can ask them later on, whenever you want. And we will be going live super soon again on the same topic, but then with a different version of it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, and let's say bye bye. Yeah.
thank you everyone for your time.
High five. Last high five, Sam. High
All right.
five. Yes. Okay. Bye. Bye, everybody. See you soon.